I'm Alex Johnson. I'm from DeKalb County, Georgia. Grew up in Stone Mountain. I now live in Dunwoody, Georgia with my wife and one-year-old son, and I've always been a Republican. And I got involved in the Georgia GOP back in about 2009. I got involved in the local county party. It was actually sort of a funny story. I was at home. I was still in law school. My mom came in one day because she was upset over the Obama election. I was like, well, why don't you do something? And she said, what? I was like, well, maybe there's a Republican Party around me to get involved in. And ever since then, in getting involved and learning about the way things work, I've been involved in the party. I went to Oglethorpe University in Atlanta, small liberal arts college. I majored in politics. I currently practice law. I went to Georgia State for law school, and the area of law I handle is I do civil litigation. I handle things like car wrecks, fighting insurance companies. I also do constitutional rights litigation, suing government officials when they violate people's rights. So that's me. I'm also president of the National Federation of Republican Assemblies, which is a nationwide group that's all volunteer, that stands for having principled people in party and public office. I've been involved in the Georgia Republican Assembly, if anyone's heard of that. I'm chairman of that right now, and it's just getting good people into office and holding them accountable once there. I mean, we've supported Charlize. We supported Colton Moore, if you know him. I know he visited before and got a poor reception from the politicians, but a great reception from all the people. So that's always a good way for things to be. So I guess, but before I get into the case, I want to let you know just a little bit about the history of what I did so that you understand the perspective. So when I got involved in the Republican Party in 2009, I came in thinking, because I was raised right, I came in thinking that Republicans are for lower taxes, personal responsibility, and life, and just generally conservative principles. Like, that's what we were here for: lower taxes, individual rights, less spending, just a better government. And then one of the first DeKalb GOP meetings I was at, I remember we had a Republican state senator at the time who got up and was talking about how they passed something spending more money. And then all the people in the room applauded. And I was confused. I was thinking, wait, I'm a Republican, and people here are applauding this state senator who's voting for things that are growing government. And that confused me at the time. And this was before 2012. This was sometime around 2010. And then 2012 rolls around, and by then I'm a lawyer. I'm legal counsel for the local party. And they're talking about wanting young people and new people involved. And a bunch of new people showed up to the party conventions in 2012. A lot of young people. And I was told, like, hey, invite them to the next county meeting. They show up. The party chair proceeds to attack them, say that they're just horrible people. These are people who showed up supporting Ron Paul, but they were all limited government Republicans. And they got told, like, you all are horrible, why are you here? You're terrible. So that confused me, as did the fact that at the state convention, when a Tea Party person got up, and there was a resolution saying that if that as a party we would only support someone who was opposed to the NDAA. And then a Tea Party person got up and said, we can't have a resolution at the state convention doing that because then we might not be able to support our presidential candidate. And I scratched my head and I was like, wait a second, they're supposed to work for us. Like, if we're for less government and the politicians aren't following that, like, they need to get in line with us, not the other way around. I mean, they work for us, right? Right. So that was the first 3 years of me being involved in the party. It was seeing how the party was not standing up for limited government Republican principles, and it was trying to keep people out. So from there, I started wondering why that happened. I ran for party chairman a few times, and I was very much in favor of accountability. I realized that about half the party at the time was in favor of politicians doing what the party wants, but that the ones in leadership, to a large extent, were not. They were very much like, we will follow the politician no matter what. It doesn't matter what they believe in as long as they have an R next to their name, and you all need to stay out of primaries. So that got me thinking, and I've been in favor of accountability ever since. And in recent history, just so that we know it hasn't gone away, Colton Moore, who I mentioned a minute ago, Senator Colton Moore, who the GR8 has supported, I'm personal friends with, he was in favor of getting Fani Willis, the one who's prosecuting Trump and a number of Republicans, the past party chairman David Schaefer, all of that, getting her out of office, either impeaching her or changing the RICO law to end the prosecutions. And for his efforts, which I fully support, the Republican caucus in the Senate threw him out of the Republican caucus. So the point being that there is a political, when I say political establishment, or I say anything negative about the political industry, I am not referring to anyone who is working hard trying to get Trump elected or trying to get lower taxes or anything like that. I'm referring to the people who really see politics as just a money game. And from that, I have personally, and the Republican Assembly has been trying to get more people involved in the party. We need more citizens involved. I don't know how many of you have been involved for a really long time in the party, but in the end, the party should be representing the people. And then the politicians need to be following the party. And under the First Amendment, the Republican Party has freedom of association. The party can choose who we associate with. And the reason why they've been getting away with some of this bad behavior is because the party has not been actually providing that check. The people who make money off of this stuff, the political industry, have been perfectly fine with be quiet, wait till the end of the primary. But what happens in that system? That means people with money could put out a bunch of mailers, push cards, text messages, TV ads, whatever it takes, to make someone who may be a liberal look like a Republican. And the ones who aren't going to play ball, that aren't going to give special favors and money to certain corporations, they aren't going to get as much money, so they never make it out of the primary, and then we're all left in that horrible situation, which I know every single one of you in this room has felt before. I have to choose between the lesser of two evils. Like, I'm certainly not voting for a Democrat, so I guess I have to hold my nose and vote for this Republican. We don't need that. That is not the system we need, because we're all here, and the party can choose its candidates. Now, what has happened is that we have a primary system in Georgia. State law says there is a primary. In the rules, in the law, it says that the county party could choose to do qualifying for county office. This is where the lawsuit comes in, transitioning into that. So the law says that the county parties can do qualifying. One of the areas in state law says that anyone qualifying has to comply with any party procedural rules. That's for the state and for the counties. The way the party used to be run back more than 6 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, the state party would not even humor or entertain a local county party saying, we aren't qualifying someone. Like, they would probably call, have a fit, yell at the county party leadership. Like, it would be very ugly. But we have better party leadership now than we did 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago. So in Catoosa County, Georgia, there were some politicians, county commissioners, who, one, endorsed a Democrat, others all pushed for higher taxes, and they were trying to restrict property rights. So these are so-called Republican incumbents that were doing that. The local party changed their party procedural rules to say that if you want to qualify for county commission, you need to get essentially get permission from the county committee, like the county leadership. It's actually saying you need an affidavit to run. So a number of candidates, just about every candidate who wanted to run got the affidavit and could run, except for the ones who had endorsed a Democrat or supported higher taxes and such. They did not get affidavits. So what ended up happening is those candidates sued the county party, threatened them, and then the judge threatened them with multiple $1,000s a day fines, incarceration. They sued the executive board members themselves. It's like, I think it was 5 or 6 very nice volunteer ladies up there, made no money off politics, great people. Myself, my law partner, Catherine Bernard, and David Oles, one of the district chairs, I think your district chair, all of us attorneys, pro bono, are helping the county party. So we're representing the people getting persecuted by these politicians. So we went up there, judge threatened them with all this. the county the county committee refused to cave. They were like, we aren't going to qualify them. The judge tried to make them qualify the candidates, and the volunteers, the county board just said no. They just refused to do it. So then the county elections board qualified them. They thought the judge was making them do it. So the county elections board qualified those candidates. Citizens up there appealed that. And then we also filed a lawsuit against the election board saying it was a violation of the party's constitutional rights in order to force the party to associate with people that were not Republican. And that, so the legal cases, the one where they tried getting money from the county board and throwing them in jail, that appeal was dismissed because it became moot because the election ended up getting over. But none of the ladies were incarcerated, and as of now, none of them have had to pay any money. So that case, because there are 3 cases, that one's still pending. The one with the election board qualification of the candidates, that one is not really pending because the procedure there didn't really move forward. The third one of suing over the constitutional rights, that one is still proceeding very, very strongly. That's what I do a lot of, is something called 1983 litigation, suing the government when they violate rights. So that one, the district judge said pretty much that the government could do what they wanted. We're appealing it to the 11th Circuit. That's what's currently pending. I am very confident on the law here because there are a number of cases, and I'm going to walk through them with you just so you have some of the background about the power that you have as the Republican Party and that county parties and state parties have regarding association. So in that one case that existed was about a parade in Boston in 1995. This is a U.S. Supreme Court case, and a group that was it was actually called Hurley versus Irish American Gay, Lesbian, and Bisexual Group of Boston. And what happened in that lawsuit was that a group tried making a veterans group include them in their parade. And Boston had a law that said you can't discriminate against gay people. And the Supreme Court ruled that regardless of any permit and discrimination requirements, you cannot force a private organization, such as this veterans group doing a parade, to change their message. So if they don't want to have essentially a gay messaging in their veterans parade, the government can't make the group do that, which seems sort of common sense under the First Amendment, but you would have to wonder with some of the woke stuff now, like, could the government do it? And the Supreme Court said no, you can't force a private organization to change their message. Then in another case in 1981, Democratic Party of U.S. versus Wisconsin, and that was a 1981 case, there was a state law in Wisconsin trying to make it so that delegates to the National Convention had to vote the way that the primary voters wanted them to. Essentially a state law forcing delegates to do things at the National Convention. U.S. Supreme Court, again, said you can't do that. You can't have the government, through state law, forcing the Democrat Party to have delegates voting the way that the state wants them to. That's not allowed. And that was in 1981. In 1989, U versus San Francisco County Democratic Central Committee, they tried to pass a law in California saying that the state party could not endorse candidates for office. I think you probably are guessing the theme here, but again, the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, state law can't control what a party does. Like, sure, a party can't go and discriminate against black people or gay people and not let them in, but you can't control the party's operations. Then in Tashjian v. Republican Party of Connecticut in 1986, and this one surprised me. So in Connecticut, there was a law at one point that said that that party primaries only could involve the members of that party. And first what happened is an independent voter sued, because they have party registration by party, you're either Republican or Democrat or you don't affiliate. They sued the party saying, I want to be able to vote in your primary. And the courts at that time said, no, you can't force your way in. Then in this case, what happened is the Republican Party of Connecticut had changed their mind essentially and was thinking, state law says independents can't vote in our primary, but we want them to now. We don't want to keep independents out. We want anyone who wants to vote in our primary to be able to do that. So the Republican Party of Connecticut sued the state, saying, we want to be able to associate with these non-Republicans. We want them to be able to vote in our primaries, and state law is stopping it. That's unconstitutional. And the U.S. Supreme Court said, the party, you're absolutely right. You have to, if you want to be able to associate with independents, that state law is unconstitutional because it stops them from voting in your primary like you want them to. Wild, right? That's sort of crazy, but it's true. The party gets to choose who they associate with. And then here in Georgia, in 1996, in the 11th, this is the 11th Circuit case, not the U.S. Supreme Court, Duke v. Massey. What happened is David Duke, who is known as someone who is not very modern on discrimination type issues, tried to force himself onto the Republican ballot. He tried saying, I get to run as a Republican, I have a right to run as a Republican, my voters should get to vote for me as a Republican. And the 11th Circuit said, no, parties have a constitutional right to associate with the candidates they want to, and they don't want you. Sorry, you could run as an independent. That was the 11th Circuit. And finally, in 2000, in California Democratic Party v. Jones, this is a Supreme Court case, highest court of the land, they specifically were saying regarding California's blanket primary system, they were saying that political parties have a right to exclude non-members from primary elections. That the state, because out there, the state was trying to say you have to have blanket primaries, and what happened there is the court ruled that no, the party can choose who gets to influence who their candidates are. So political parties are essentially private organizations. We get ballot access through state law, but that doesn't mean the state can control what we do, what you do. So that's all the case law behind the position that has led now to the fight in Catoosa County, which is they are trying to force the party to say that they have to associate with these candidates who are not really Republicans. Now, for those of you who don't know Catoosa County, it is about 70 to 80% Republican. That is the voting group. So if you have an R next to your name, you are going to win in the general election, almost certainly. So that is, and that's why we are fighting, and that is why I'm confident in what's going to happen, because there's these cases I'm reading off to you. Lawyers can play games and sort of say oh, look at these good cases, and then there are really bad cases somewhere else that say the opposite. I mean, there aren't any bad cases that say the opposite. These are the cases. I mean, the irony is I looked up more and more of these cases during this litigation, but I've been thinking that parties were private organizations that had all these rights well prior to this litigation starting. But the Supreme Court has been very clear, so we'll see where it goes as time moves on. So I'm intentionally, that's sort of my presentation on the case and where we are. I think that the parties should be able to do that, but I intentionally want to hear questions. What are you all thinking? You have questions for me, and it could be about the case, it could be about the Republican Assembly, it could be about party history. I'm here to answer any of your questions. So, yes, sir.
Well, when I first came today, I always had the image that anyone who wants to run for office should run however they want, and you just persuaded me quite effectively that that's not necessarily right. So the question then is, what if you have a county that is essentially left-leaning Rhino Republican, and a Reagan-esque type candidate comes and he wants to run, the party says no. Here's a guy who's as authentic Republican as can be, and he's being discriminated against because the party representatives there really aren't representing the traditional party. Does he have any redress? Does he have anywhere to go?
So there's two things. Two things. That's a very good concern. The concern is what happens if you're in a left-leaning county, somebody like Reagan walks in, party excludes them. Well, I guess first I'd say that as a practical matter. So I'm from DeKalb County. That is a left county.
We already know.
I could not see us as a party not wanting. If anyone wants to run, I don't think we would be. It's like just the sense of the party would ever be excluding them, and they'd be pretty happy. I mean, unless, for example, Barack Obama walked in and said, I want to run as a Republican now. We'd probably just say like, we aren't that dumb. Like we aren't going to be made fools of. The second thing is that they can run as an independent. That's part of it. Is that you can, like the Supreme Court and case law in general has said that people have a right to run for office. I mean, Georgia's ballot access laws actually have been there is a court order essentially rewriting Georgia's ballot access laws because the restrictions on independents were so bad a number of years back, I forget the year, that a federal court said, no, you have to lower the amount of signatures required for an independent to get on the ballot. So they can always run as an independent, and they also could always do the other thing, which is to try to get more people involved in the party and change party leadership. But I think
in theory,
Yeah.
though, if a party wanted to exclude him, even though they were more Republican,
Yes.
they could do that under the current law.
Yes. I believe that the party could exclude. The way that I would see that working is, yes, the party could exclude someone who.
It's not a very big risk.
Yeah, but I think the risk of that's very low because if you're a Democrat county, why would you? I would actually think any county party trying to do that is probably just inclusion with the Democrats, because if you don't want any good candidates running against the Democrat, then you have a problem.
No, you've answered the question.
Thank you. Yes, Marcia.
I don't know if you're aware, but here in Cherokee County, a woman that actually was a Republican went to run for U.S. Congress as a Democrat. So, it works both ways. And they didn't know any better, and she won the primary, so she now is the candidate running for, but they found out, now they are supporting an independent candidate. So I truly believe this is the way to go. We have to have that to prevent, because some people say, oh, you have to go to the primary and you find out. Unfortunately, the majority of the voters have no idea who is who. The party people are the ones that actually, do the job of finding out who is who and things like that. So I just believe maybe the county committee, not just the executive committee, but the county committee should be involved to decide if a person is or not a Republican and go into the principles and show. But I totally support having accountability and not let the voters that unfortunately are not educated and decide on the primary. They just voted for the incumbent no matter what. That's how it has been. And I have, knocking a lot of doors to know that's what they told me. Why you vote for this person? Oh, because I don't want the Democrats to win. In a primary, they have no even idea. So my question to you is, I know there is a group here that they call themselves conservatives, and they did a amicus against the GOP. Can you explain to me what's going on?
Are you talking about the coalition?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. So I mean, it is interesting to me. So that's a very good point about the way that the party is, and that the party should be looking into who the people are. So I think that there are really three parties right now, and bear with me for a second. Three major parties. There's the Democrats, like the actual sort of principled Democrats, like the ones who are really just sort of blatantly socialist, like we want government largesse. I mean, you talk about like Bernie Sanders, AOC, those type of people. Then you have like good Republicans, like President Trump and others that are just like standing for principle. But then you have this sort of this group that no one's really identified, but they are the people who will move to the city of Atlanta, run as a Democrat, then move to Cherokee County and run as a Republican. And they will do the exact same things in both places, but they just have a bunch of money behind them. And I think that there has been a long time sort of follow the leader, follow the whoever gets the Republican nomination, don't let the people have a voice group, which you saw in 2016. Like you saw it when Donald Trump ran and the media was mocking him and like, oh, he's going to lose. And then you saw like the most well-funded candidate go down. You saw Jeb go down. You saw the establishment people go down one after another until it was left with Rubio. What was it? It was Rubio, Cruz, and Trump. And then, of course, all the money gets to be on Rubio because he was the most established one. Like you could see it in real time, like them going down because they hated Trump because he was against that whole the third sort of uniparty, so to speak. And so when you mention things like the groups that are just wanting to follow the politicians, like the one that you just described, the one that filed the amicus, for example, in my opinion anyway, I think that what you see is you see people that are losing power. Like they're used to being the ones who tell everyone like, stay out, be quiet, we're going to be friends with the politicians, we're going to influence them and get the money for them, and we don't want the riffraff getting involved and bothering anyone. And I think that's what you see with the people who are resistant. Because I know that some groups started up like right after new leadership came in. I think that's what happened in Cherokee. The reports I got were new leadership came into Cherokee, and then the losers went off and started a group, which is I think that just sort of shows what's going on, and it shows the necessity to make sure that good, principled people get involved in the party. You need more people involved. Like, that's the goal. We need to be representing the public. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. My question is, what is the status of I think it's a lawsuit with the Georgia State Election Board?
Which one?
Well,
there's a lot.
Okay, the one that was advocating for county ballots. And from my reading, that has maybe an appeal or it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And the reason I asked that and concerned about that, I wish we could count ballots, is because I have been a poll watcher in one of the largest on Lamar Boulevard in Cherokee County for 2 days, 2 times. I have many more. There are inconsistencies, potential inconsistencies that I'm seeing, and things that we were told the poll watching course I am not allowed to do. They would not let me do it. The last thing I would just say as information, I don't know if you heard this, that I got an email alert yesterday that after you vote, I voted first, after you vote, look at your ballot, because some of the machines may be switched. If you pick Trump, may switch to Harris before you put into the scanner. Can you elaborate on that big board and if we're going to be able to count the ballots?
Absolutely. So I'm not involved in that litigation, but I am a little familiar with it. And well, I guess to start off with, obviously make sure to look at your ballot when it prints out. I mean, I just voted yesterday, and I remember looking at my ballot. And it was interesting. I mean, it all showed up correctly, although it did sort of look like the check mark was next to Vance for president, even though you're voting for Trump, but the ballot still was good. But always read your ballot before turning it in. I am from DeKalb County, where there's a Democrat primary where one of the candidates got 0 votes in her own precinct during the primary election. She reported it, and then they did a hand recount, and she actually was at first place and won a commission spot. But the issue was that when you went in and voted for one candidate, it was casting ballots for another, and the county said, oh, that's due to a logic and accuracy test error. Don't worry, we fixed it. It won't happen again. I mean, in my mind, I don't know about all of you, but when there is a system that allows that to happen, I don't trust that system. I mean, it doesn't matter that they fixed it. It just matters that it's like you actually could fool everyone. The only reason they didn't get fooled is the candidate noticed they had no votes in their own precinct. But for ballot counting, that lawsuit, I believe, is being appealed. I think that's one of the lawsuits ended up in front of Judge McBurney in Fulton County. Judge McBurney, because I sometimes think about these things. I don't pay a lot of attention to judges, but he's very sort of famous on this. But he's also the judge that struck down the heartbeat bill, the anti-abortion law, and then it got appealed to the Supreme Court in Georgia. Supreme Court of Georgia said, no, you're wrong, sends it back, and then McBurney then strikes it down again on some other grounds. It's like, did you not get the message the first time? Like, because it's that bill being appealed. So I have a feeling that appeal right now of the ballot counting is going to, I'm hoping the Supreme Court does the right thing, but that's where it is. It's on appeal. Georgia Supreme Court. Yes, those are Georgia Supreme Court.
Before the actual election day.
Whether or not it's before election day, that's a good question. I will say that I will say that the Georgia Supreme Court, we will see what happens. We'll see what happens. I don't know if they're going to do it fast or not. I mean, the irony is that one of the lawsuits that I was describing with Catoosa County, the reason why they didn't hear the appeal of the attempted attack on Catoosa was because, it took too long and the primary's over. But then they are very quick to hear other election cases. So it very is up to their discretion whether or not they want to hear a case quickly or not. So.
Well, we really need to push for that. I mean, I'm just saying.
Take one more question. I'm sure Alex can answer questions afterwards.
Oh yeah.
So this is actually 3 questions.
All right, I will hear them all.
And you may not know the answer. The first one is, in what time frame do you think that Catoosa case will be settled? And then also, how can we here locally at Cherokee that we might be able to do to help the ladies or with the Catoosa case? And third, we consider doing the county rule here, and I know there's some other counties that are considering it. Would you recommend waiting until the case is solved, or go ahead and start that process for the next coming election? If you're going to do the accountability rule, put that into your procedures. What would you recommend? Because I figure if we do it before the case, then we may not end up in a case ourselves. So.
Okay, so the 3 questions: the timing, whether or not to do it here, and what can be done to help. So the timing on the appeal, I figure it'll probably be next year before we get anything back on that, just because of the speed of the 11th Circuit. I don't think they're in a rush on it. We haven't filed our briefing yet on the appellant side, so I think that decision will be decided sometime next year.
Like late next year?
Mid to late. I mean, I'm doing a lot of these constitutional rights cases and dealing in federal courts. Sometimes they'll decide in 3 or 4 months. Sometimes it will take a year. Like it varies. It's all up to the federal judges. Those lifetime appointments really don't necessarily give the greatest sense of urgency, but it varies. And I don't try to rush the judges because they try to get it right, I think. So as to whether or not to do it here, so I will say that the lawsuits that are currently going on are not over necessarily the rule, but over the application of it. So if you change the county party rules, or if the state party decided to change their rules, which would honestly, that would be an even bigger and stronger move if the state party actually took a stance to keep somebody off the ballot. I mean, I think Josh McCoon did talk about keeping Duncan off. I mean, he put out a tweet or something saying that the executive committee was going to, or maybe the state committee was going to vote to not let Jeff Duncan. And for those of you who don't know, Jeff Duncan, previous lieutenant governor who endorses Harris and is campaigning for Harris and all that. I mean, stopping them from ever running as a Republican in Georgia seems like a fair thing to do. Other people have talked about Brad Raffensperger. So there's some people that'd be good if the state party actually took that stance on. Changing the rule I think it's fine to change the rule. I think that when the time when lawsuits would happen, I think, is if and when you told someone they can't run. Then again, in Cherokee County, you might have more favorable judges than the one up in Catoosa that tried to, that essentially was bullying the Catoosa people. And that judge actually recused themselves too. I didn't throw that in there, but after he bullied them, he then recused himself from the case. And I only thought of that just now because it's not really good to talk badly about a judge on a case, but he's not on the case anymore because he recused himself because he's friends with the people who are the incumbents and that were being kept off the ballot. And the third question about what you can do to help, I think that help, so the attorneys, we're doing that case pro bono. We're not charging any legal fees or anything. There are, though, expenses of appellate fees, the transcript fees and such, with the Catoosa party itself does need help with, and if they end up getting fined, they may need financial support, so helping them that way. And also just letting people know about this and about the fact that the party should be able to maintain its own brand. I mean, to me, when I think about the fact the party supported Mitt Romney, that disgusts me. I do think that on some level, though, the party does need to, or any of these other legislators, like the ones who try to throw Colton Moore out of the caucus, it's embarrassing. Those people need to be following you, not the other way around. And unless the party actually treats these politicians as the public servants they are, that were qualified by the party, we're going to have a real issue. So I think what really helps is helping out Catoosa directly financially, spreading the word about this, making sure to get as many friends of yours as possible involved in the party who want to see the politicians held accountable. And of course, got to throw in the plug that I am chairman of the Republican Assemblies. So, please join that. We try to organize around the state to get more people that agree with this philosophy involved in the party. That's what we do, because you have to organize for the conventions. Those are the things that I think could really help.
What about an amicus brief? Is that too late?
No. I mean, I think.
Would that even really help?
I mean, it could help. The state, you all doing it, the state party doing that could help. I think in the 11th Circuit, I forget all the rules for amicus briefs because I'm usually the primary party in the case, so I'm not overly familiar with federal amicus rules. I know state amicus rules are very broad because I saw those recently. Just about anyone can file an amicus brief. I'm not sure how it works in the 11th Circuit, but I mean, I am definitely not opposed to it. I think it'd be very helpful. Anybody who wants to help and put in amicus briefs or spread the word, there's no harm in that. I mean, more people need to know about that.
The president is right here, North Georgia.
Oh,
GRA.
yes, exactly. Richard Jordan's our local GRA head. So if you want to join, he's our local warrior. Make sure to stay in contact with him. So.
Okay, Alex.
Your three questions for the ballot, just to.
How did I vote on them?
Yeah.
Well, I personally voted on them no, yes. I don't think that. I mean, there's some good things and bad things with all of them. I default to no unless there's a very good reason to change the Constitution, just because, I mean, I'm pretty sure that they're all going to pass because everyone just votes yes on them, but it's, I just tend to personally vote no unless there's a really good reason.
Same way I was thinking.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you all.
Alex,